This is Rock and Roll Grad School with your hosts Heidi Hedquist and Luke Poling. First-time callers, long-time listeners.
Hello, kiddies. We're going to have a good time together. So I want to ask you something because I texted you about this the other day and it's been stuck in my head ever since. And so because of the show, because of my obsessive personality,
yes,
I have been reading a lot of books and a lot of notes on different musicians, as I'm sure you have as well.
Yes.
Probably not as much as me, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, that's fine.
This isn't a competition.
Yeah, it is, but it's okay. It's fine.
Is, yeah.
You are far better read than I.
But I read something or heard something about a band that in recording one of their, I believe, most recent albums, could not afford a string section that they wanted to include in a song. So instead of hiring a string section with money they didn't have, they just got together and sang the word strings to the tune of the orchestration they would have put on with strings.
Okay.
And I don't know who that is. And it's driving me crazy. So I would like to offer that up to the grad school community.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you know, does this ring any bell?
No, it does not ring a bell, nor does it play the violin for me.
Right. And I can't even narrow it down because I've been reading stuff about the Grateful Dead and Rush. So it's like, it's a wide array of music. So I can't even be like, oh, well, if it's in this genre. So I have no clue.
I've been reading about Lou Reed, so that's not.
Oh, which one? Which, the
one
Curtis?
The one I started forever ago and had to put down because we had so many other things to read. Yes, it is that one.
Is it good?
It is good.
Excellent.
It is indeed.
So today, I don't know why we're wasting all this time with this nonsense because we've.
Well, now I'm annoyed. Like, why didn't you look this up and just find the answer? Are we doing like a contest? Like, do we have something to give away?
I don't think we're doing a contest. I would,
because
if I was
I'm
more
not going to listen to you until I know the answer to this question.
If I was going to be more buzzwordy and hip to all the lingo, I would say hopefully the grad school hive mind will be able to come up and help us. And you're making a face that is just like, good luck, Sonny.
Well,
this is going to bug me for like years.
It's going to bug me. That's the problem.
Welcome to my nightmare.
I'm going to look this up.
I was Googling
and it didn't come up.
I was trying every different version.
Was it us? Maybe it was us. Maybe we were too bad we don't have this swelling, amazing string section to intro us into this show. And then we said, why don't we just say the word strings repeatedly and that will do.
I know we've talked about having a string section. And I think that's maybe part of the thing that's just making me crazy.
Maybe it's us. I think it's us.
Maybe it could be us. But
or was it one of the composers we spoke to? Did they tell us that when they were putting the pieces together to send it to someone?
I don't know.
And this is where the strings would go.
Right. If it was DeMar and what's the name of his composer he worked with? Or Roger DeMar or Alan or was it Leslie, I believe, is the composer we talked to. Leslie. And we're completely tipping our hand on
Kamari?
People we've spoken to. I thought it was Leslie.
Leslie's not her name. You got to cut all this out because we can't let our guests know we screwed up their names.
Lauren. Okay, Lauren. That's an L. That's an L word.
Yeah.
Does that count for anything?
Sure. Katomi. Okay. Because I could see Katomi saying something like that. Or Lauren, because she's both.
Right. It could be. I don't know. I just I would love to put it out to the to our listeners and see if anybody else has read the same thing that I read. I doubt it, but just in the off chance. You know?
I know. All right, it's good.
So that is that. We also, but we need to stop yakking about this and talk about the show we have this week, because let's be honest, we got a show this week.
We do have a show this week.
We have the great Steve Cropper.
Yes.
And which just that sentence is insane to say.
It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's very cool.
So if you do not know, welcome out from under your rock.
Mm-hmm. Time to get your fang out of a rock.
Exactly. Let's go over a few of Steve's highlights. He wrote and recorded and sang his solo album, Playing My Fang, in 1983. Mm-hmm.
He did, with one of the best album covers of all time.
Right. Close second behind his first solo album, whose name I cannot recall at the moment, where he's peeking through some Venetian blinds.
By far, one of the greatest album covers of all time. And yet those are not the things he's known for.
I know, it's bizarre. He also, if that wasn't enough, he was in Booker T and the MGs. He backed Otis Redding. He has played with
Otis Redding.
He wrote with Otis Redding, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. He co-wrote Soul Man with Isaac Hayes. He has played with all four Beatles, not at the same time.
No, but still.
He's worked with the Staple Singers. It's an insane list of people.
Mark Farner, he's worked with everybody.
Farner, Felix Cavallari, a ton of folks. And now he has another sort of proper solo album.
Yes.
And it's a fun little listen. It's very gritty. It's very... I had it on this afternoon as I was doing stuff. And it's... I don't know. Every time he comes up, like there's that little break and all of a sudden, hey, here's Steve playing his thing. It's just like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And he is, I guess we kind of forgot the important part that he was named the #2 greatest guitar player of all time by Mojo Magazine over in the UK.
Yes.
And he was in the top 50 guitar players of all time for Rolling Stone.
Yes. And do you want to tell the best anecdote that goes with that story?
I think you should go ahead.
So when Mojo called Keith Richards, of all people, to say, hey, here is the second greatest guitarist of all time. What do you think of that? His response was simply, perfect. And I hope he just hung up the phone afterwards, because that would be the most Keith Richards thing ever. So we can always hope.
Because Keith Richards is also, in my mind, perfect.
Right. No, that's going to be question 1 when he comes on the show.
Yes.
So
it is, among a host of others.
Right. Hey, Keith, tell us about your blood replacement. Tell us.
We're not asking. No. But I have the perfect shirt to wear. I actually have multiple shirts to wear for that interview.
Oh, we're going to have to schedule a break so you can change.
Mm-hmm.
Be like seeing Cher.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's been a while since you've released a proper solo album. Why did you feel that sort of now was the time to give this?
I have to explain it now. When I said it, I knew what I was thinking, but nobody else did. It's the first album I've had since that very first album, with a little help of my friends, that actually has some groove to it, some dance music. Everything else was sort of like, song after song. And some of them, I tried to keep them danceable, but this whole album is all about having fun and dancing. And I think everybody's ready to get back to that.
Oh, God, yes.
They want a little excitement in their life, I think. And that's why I say this is the first real album. I should have used the word real. I said the first album, and everybody took that as saying, well, you've had other albums out. Yeah, my whole career is full of albums. But it's the first serious album of dance music. That's what I'm thinking.
Love it. And it really sounds like it's of a piece. Like it's all, the sounds are all very similar.
It's fun. I listen to it. I never get tired of listening to it. And most of my projects, once they're finished and mixed, I'll listen to it one time to make sure it's okay. Or the test pressing, then I never listen to it again unless I hear it on the radio, a song from it. And this one I listen to, and it's just great. It makes you happy and makes you feel good.
It does. Being able to sort of sneak preview it.
And that's what we always did at Stax. We took a lot of songs and just turned them around. And then we made them our songs, but we made dance music. That's all we were doing. We'd take a lot of old blues things and put a beat to it and make them danceable.
Well, your guitar sound is something that is so identifiable as you.
I would hope so.
How long into your playing? I know you started pretty young. Did you feel like you got that thing that
I'm
is like?
still learning. I never
how long
was a
do you?
player. There's a lot of great players out there that I don't even compete. I wouldn't even think about competing with. But I can write songs when they can't, and they can play solos when I can't. So there you go. I run out of notes after about 12 bars or so. They don't. They can play all night long, and I never was able to do that. I just don't have any interest for doing it. I lose attention to myself after about 8 bars or 10 bars or 12 or whatever I'm playing.
Well,
every now and then I've overdub. They want me to do 2 solos. I'm going, wait a minute. 24 bars. That's way out of my league, guys. You know, if they ain't dancing, then it doesn't mean anything to me. So just playing to be playing doesn't mean a thing.
Well, that I think comes through in all of your music, in all of your interviews. It always translates through. And
I like to get in, get out of the way, and let people dance. If they got to stop and listen.
I feel like that's words to live by. Everyone needs to get in, get out, and just let people dance.
There you go.
And to Luke's point about your sound is so distinct and so you, and obviously you've worked with a million different songwriters and all these iconic pieces. And one of the things in kind of looking through your catalog and then hearing your incredible stories of how so many of these great songs were created, in your story about Knock on Wood and being so excited about it, and then hearing feedback of, that sounds a lot like In the Midnight Hour, but where does that line in your mind change from being, it's just the sound of us and our music and our songwriting and our playing and whoever the artist is, or to where it's like, oh, it's just a knockoff of another song we've done? How do you distinguish that?
Well, I don't know. It's in terms of going from song to song. I think an intro tells you what song you're getting ready to play. It has a lot of times it has nothing to do with the song musically, but it gives you an identity of what's coming next. And I do that with Soul Band. I say I'm gonna play 2 notes. I bet everybody in this room knows the song that I'm gonna play next, and then I'll play the whole intro, and they get it. All I do is go boom ding, and they know that's Soul Band.
It's true. And you have been a part of some, incredible songs, but songs that have amazing intros and identifiable intros where
I kind of pride myself in that. And I was known at Stax as the intro guy. And that's the one I just talked about, Soul Man. I remember Isaac Hayes coming to me the day before the session. And he said, Steve, I know you don't like to be bothered when you're mixing. However, I know that David Porter and I have written a hit for tomorrow's session, but I can't come up with an intro. Would you take 5 minutes and come down? And that's what I did. And I said, play something. He said, no, I want you to play something. I said, you play some changes and I'll play to it. We'll see. And he goes, that's it. And then we used it again as a modulation. So that worked out real good.
I like the first impression guy.
And do you have like a notebook of these things sitting around? Or was that just Isaac Hayes started playing and you're like, this sounds good?
But we're working on a book for the first time in my career. And maybe somebody can use that as notes and look at the book and go, well, there it is. I don't know. We'll see what we talk about. So it is what it is.
One of the things too, that so often so many great performers and songwriters over time, they're tired of the stories. They're tired of telling the music. And yet it's so exciting to hear that you're putting together a book. And also you've done such a wonderful job, not just through interviews, but sharing those stories with the world and not letting them disappear into the annals of history. And
I don't get tired of telling the same stories. And a lot of the questions are similar or the same. Basically, they start about the same. Then what the information they want is the same.
Sure.
I don't mind telling that story. I mean, I had such a great time at Stax. And I have said this: if I knew what helped my career along, I would bottle it and give it to everybody. It'd just be right there on the shelf. It goes, pick up your copy, whatever. I don't know. I've been a very lucky guy, just very lucky. That's all I can say.
I love too that high school kids everywhere, if they just hear your story of how you fell into Stax, They would have such an argument when they're accused of talking during passing time, because great things happen when kids talk to each other in high school hallways.
They
and
do.
You're proof and point of that.
Absolutely.
When you're walking through the hallways of Stax and you've got Isaac Hayes and the rest of the MGs there, did you guys realize how special and how unique a time that was?
Well, you mentioned hallways of schools, and I had a guy come up and he said, I understand you've got a real nice, good band. And I said, well, thank you very much. And he said, I want to be in your band. I said, well, we're not looking for anybody, but what do you play? And he says, I play saxophone. I said, well, we're not looking for horns right now, but how long have you been playing? He said, oh, about 3 months. I remember that like it happened yesterday.
It's such a great story.
More than 16 years old at the most. So
I love it. And I love
one of the world's greatest saxophone players.
Yeah.
He's not with us now, but he did. Charles Packy accent, I should say.
I love it.
And he, in that conversation, he said his uncle owned a recording studio. That got my attention.
Yeah.
But his uncle didn't. He might have looked at it that way, but he had some recording equipment in his garage, which he later got a studio.
But that's it. The rest is history.
The rest is history.
That's it. I love it.
And some of your early bands were integrated at a time when that was a really big deal. And
yeah.
did you get a lot of pushback?
Because we didn't know we were segregated. We had no idea. Mm-hmm. And when I hear about history today, they say Memphis, Tennessee was one of the most integrated or segregated cities in the South. And we never even thought about that. I mean, it was just, we wasn't brought up that way. There was no color at Stax. There was no blacks and no whites. I mean, they were, but we didn't look at each other as being different. We were there for the same reason. That was to get a hit record. Mm-hmm. And the thing about Stax was that you just automatically knew if you had problems, if you had a fight with a friend or something, you left that on the sidewalk. You didn't bring it into the studio and talk about it because that would disrupt the day. You'd be talking about that instead of trying to make this song a hit. So everybody left their troubles out the door and would pick them back up maybe when they went out. Who knows? But it was, you felt so safe at Stax, and it was just a great place to be and a lot of fun at the time. And we had fun with music. That's the main thing. We made all that work. It was work, but it was fun. We were very serious about what we did, but we just had fun doing it. A lot of fun, a lot of laughs and just giggle about it. Even the session with Green Onions, which turned out to be phenomenal because it still sounds good today. Yeah. And we did this blues thing. We're just laughing our kazoos off. And that's what Jim Stewart said, hey guys, you better come and listen to this. And we were dumbfounded. We went, you recorded that? He was already set up to record, so he just pushed the record button. And that's how it all got started. And he said, after we listened to it, we said, oh, that's pretty good. They said, if we decided to put something like this out, do you have anything that we could put on the B-side? And we just looked dumbfounded. We didn't know. And I did remember that Booker had played me a riff that he thought might be good for a vocal song. And I asked Booker, and he said, I don't know, but come down to the organ, I'll play it, and you tell me. And that was Green Onions. 3-4 cuts later, we had Green Onions, the way it is. Maybe there's a greater power, directing all this stuff. We don't know.
We don't know.
How do we know? There's nothing. We have no way of proving it, but and we do get the credit, and that's nice to have the credit for. But I think it's always somebody else's intention.
That's amazing.
The story about Otis Redding getting signed to Stax and him coming in as a driver for the Pine Toppers and everybody saying, all right, let's give him a shot singing.
Well, it was a Pine Toppers, Johnny Jenkins in the Pine Toppers session. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know. I remembered we were standing out on the sidewalk and waiting for them to show up. And they showed up about 20 minutes later than we expected. But this big guy gets out of the Cadillac. And I didn't know that was Johnny Jenkins' Cadillac. And I just thought that was Johnny Jenkins' driver, but it wasn't. He was the lead singer of the Johnny Jenkins and the Pine Topper Band. And he gets out of the car, comes back to the trunk, opens it up, starts carrying in mics and all kinds of stuff. And I said, hey, man, we got our own mics in there. You don't need to bring those in. He was setting up like he would for a gig. I said, bring Johnny's amp and all that stuff. That's fine. But I said, we don't need any microphones. We already have okay. And he bugged our drummer, Al Jackson, all day long about it, listening to him sing. And he said, Steve is the A&R guy. He holds auditions on Saturday. He probably won't be able to hear you sing. at the end of the day, because we didn't get anything that everybody was happy with. And so Jim Stewart said, why don't everybody take off a little early and we'll let everybody go and start this thing again tomorrow. And so we were there doing that. So I heard Al Jackson came back and we were listening to some playbacks. He said, could you just take 5 minutes out of your time and get this guy off my back? He's still bugging me to hear him sing. I said, bring him. Okay. I went down. I said, bring him down to the piano. And so this big old tall guy comes down. And I said, okay, play something. He said, man, I don't play piano. I play a little guitar, he calls it. And he said, can you give me some of them? Did you play piano? I said, no, not enough, just to write a little bit. And he said, you know, in them church quads. And what he was talking about was 6/8 triplets. I said, you mean these? He said, yeah. And he started singing These Arms Are Mine. And I just said, stop, you know. And I ran up to Jim Stewart, and I knew I'd lose my job if Jim thought I was crazy. I said, you got to come out here and hear this guy sing. He's the only singer that I know of that ever made the hair on my arm stand up. And that happened that way. And so I grabbed Jim Stewart. Jim came down. He said, get the band back together. We got to put this song down. And that's how it all started. Otis had 17 in a row after that. And poor Johnny played on These Arms Are Mine. Johnny Jenkins is still sitting there with his guitar. And he played on it. I played piano and the rest of it. And so Duck reminded me, he said, you came running out of the studio. He said, I was putting my bass in the car and you said, Duck, get your bass back up. We got to put this song down real quick. And that was These Arms Are Mine. The next morning, the first thing we were doing was cutting a B-side for it. Hey Baby, or whatever it's called, something that Otis had.
And Otis Redding is one of those musicians who is now just cast in amber as this legend. And there's, you know, like a statue. But you knew him and hung out with him. Is there something about his personality and who he was that you feel like people don't get from the records?
Maybe he was just a good old country boy. That's all he was. He brought up in the country and he talked country. And the funny thing about Otis is you had to be around him some to understand what he was saying, but he knew. And we actually put out a record one time called The Dictionary of Soul. And on the back of it is some of the cliches that he would say and what he meant by saying that. And I can't remember all of them. I know ooh-ee was one of them. And that's
an important one.
The same thing as saying, oh, wow, that is really cool. He's ooh-ee, wow. But there's more there. I don't know. There's 10 or 12 things in there. It's real funny. Yeah. And you just get around him, and he was just a down-home guy. But I always looked at Otis as an older brother, even though we were the same age. I did not know that until I read everything about him when he was born. He was born in September, and I was born in October. So there's less than a month difference. We were both 26 when he died. And they said, he did all that by the time he was 26. I said, yeah, it's amazing to me too.
Yeah.
Well, and that was so, I mean, it's such a horrific story, obviously, his passing and all of that. And obviously he left you and the rest of the team with these, obviously sitting on the dock of the bay and these amazing songs. Was there any sort of, what was the thought and process? Because often when an artist passes and there's something phenomenal in the works, when they pass, there's that argument of do we just leave it in the bin or do we give it to the world? How did you decide to?
I have no idea. All I remember is that Jerry Wexler called from New York and talked to Jim Stewart, and Jim came to me and he said, Steve, what do you got ready on Otis? I said, nothing. You know, we've been recording and nothing was finished. He said, well, get something ready. We got to put a record out. And I said, what?
Like, okay.
Still, you know, in deep mourning about Otis. And he said, I don't care. He said, you got to get something ready. That's probably the hardest thing I ever had to do.
It would have to be. I can't even imagine.
But I did it in a 24-hour period. I started at 7:30 on a Tuesday morning and handed it to a flight attendant on Wednesday morning at 7:30. And she was flying to New York. She handed the master tape to an engineer, and he took it, instead of going back to Atlantic, he took it straight to the pressing plant and put it in a pressing plant. And we had records out to the DJs by Christmas of that year.
Did you actually know this flight attendant?
What?
Or what? Did you actually know this flight attendant, or
no?
Was it? Oh my
gosh!
He
was just on an airplane going to LaGuardia, and in those days there was no security. You could walk right out on the tarmac. She walked down the steps, and I handed her the maps. She walked back up on the plane, and
wow,
took the steps up. So it is what it is.
That's also divine intervention. You picked the right flight attendant.
I remember the time. It was 7:30 to 7:30. 24 hours later.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I would have been panic stricken handing that. It's like I would have carried it like my baby.
It was a tough one, but I got through it. We did it, and it probably was bigger because of Otis's death. But they said the song would have never made it had he not gone. I disagree. We knew that song was a hit 2 weeks before it. We just knew it.
Yeah.
And you just have an inkling. You don't know it when you're cutting it, but you know when you've done it and you listen to it back, you say, that's a hit. So
right. Yeah. No, that song is.
And if it isn't, it isn't. But if it is, then you were right. That's all you could say about it.
Wow.
So I think it was a hit anyway. It probably was bigger because he had passed away.
To bring it back to the new album, I mean, you've written with a ton of people. John Tiven is your co-producer and co-writer on this record.
Right.
But this is sort of the first bunch of songs you guys have done together. What is that collaboration like compared to other folks? John and I
started this writing session, and then the Felix Cavaliere, it was his idea to do this anyway, because Felix and I were playing in the same band, the Airline All-Stars, so Northwest All-Stars.
Yes.
Anyway, John got the idea that the two of us might be able to make a record together, which was a great idea, and we did. We did a couple, and we made some real good records. I thought some good songs, but they were different, and those were songs that would require a lot of airplay and a lot of work, of which I was out of business of promoting, so I didn't care. So anyway, it is what it is. And when these tracks came about, Felix said he played on a couple of them, and then he said, guys, I don't want to finish this up for the album. Okay. He said, even if we finished the songs, I probably wouldn't want to sing them. So, okay. We did some other stuff, which was good, but it was different. And so we had John had all these tracks. He has a studio in his house. So he had access to all these tracks. And I maybe lived 5-10 minutes away. I'm as close to his studio as I am to my studio. And we're in the RCA building downtown. And I can see it out the window right here downtown. So very short distance. And because of the lockdown, this album was put together during that lockdown, during 2020, basically.
Wow.
And he had access to it. Beth Hooker is singing background on it. She's the only guest artist that we had. And most of the drummers were put on back in 2018, 2019, and so forth. So most of the songs were written to loops, just John and I. And then we would put on a drummer later and get rid of the loop. And the Bush Hog title, the first song on the album, and the only instrumental on the album, was done to a loop. It was called a loop. And I called John one day and I said, I still think about that song we wrote, that instrumental. And he couldn't find it. And he said, you mean, and he said the name of it, of the loop. And that's how he had it logged as the loop name. We couldn't use that on the album because it's been copyrighted, But anyway, so I changed it to Bush Hog. And for those who don't know what a Bush Hog is, it's a very large piece of farm equipment that is a large mowing machine. So instead of mowing grass, it's big enough and strong enough to knock down bushes. It's called a Bush Hog. That's what you do. And people cut down the bushes and twigs and stuff to get ready to plow. And, the roots get plowed under and they turn out to be mulch and work as fertilizer. And it works real good.
Have you ever written to a loop before? Or is this the first time with this?
That's a good question. I don't remember. Probably have. And, but I like playing with real drummers that can keep time. The way we grew up, we always listened to the drummer and we played to the drummer. So the drummer kept time for everybody. And we would make the cliche, well, that drummer thinks time is a spice. That's what we grew up with. And when they come out with electric drums, I was still in LA. That was a good, 30 years ago, 35 years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
And when they had some of the greatest drummers in the world to work, they had to learn how to program a drum machine. Oh, man, bless your hearts. They had no idea. And I remember one time there was a guy that had he had produced 9 platinum albums. That means 9 albums that had gone, over 1 million sales to get platinum. And he comes running upstairs, and my friend that owned the studio called me and said, "You're not gonna believe this, but so-and-so just came running up here and said, I'm doing this band, just making a demo on this band. They got a real drummer. What did I do?"
Oh, no. Like,
what am I going to do now? So anyway, I'm glad those days are over. So we got real drummers on this record, on the Fired Up record.
I mean, if you have your choice of a host of incredible drummers, how did you pick which ones were the guests?
Well, that's hard to say. The thing is that I grew up working with one of the greatest drummers, R&B drummers in the world. That's Al Jackson. There's no question about it. And Duck and I have been saying that for years. And then I think it was Anton Fig that turned us on to that show that we did up in Oslo, Norway, that was recorded in black and white. And I had said when I watched it, I said, either the guy, the head camera guy, loved drums or he loved Al Jackson, one or the other, because he focused on him a lot. And I said, there's proof right there on film that Al Jackson was the greatest R&B drummer in the world. And I worked with the best of the best in LA. No question about it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people bring up the John Lennon rock and roll session. Well, I think that day we had Hal Blaine, one of the world's greatest drummers in Hollywood, playing on that session. So it was a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh.
Now, I don't know. I mean, a drummer's a good drummer. He's not a good drummer. I do know that the Blues Brothers band has Lee Finkelstein. He's great. He's fabulous. When he first came out with the Blues Brothers, he had to learn the music. I mean, there's a pocket to everything, and he finally found it, and he's the world's greatest drummer. But he took over, I think, in Tower Power. He took over from David Garibaldi. He was that good. Wow. And David was one of the best drummers that I ever worked with in the studio, besides other guys that that are famous, like Jim Keltner and so forth. And we had Anton Fig, who was famous here because he was on TV 5 nights a week with the Letterman show. And he took Steve Jordan's place. And you know how good he is, but he turned out to be a great producer as well. So Jordan really did understand music. And everybody can't understand music. They don't understand what it's about, or they just know they like it or don't like it. That's all they know. Well, a good producer can hear a song in its raw form with maybe just a guitar or piano and a vocal, and hear it finished. Hear the whole embellishment of how many people it's going to take to finish the record and that kind of thing. So there's an art, I think, and a knowledge of being a good producer and so forth. And it's the same thing as being a good session player. I have experienced this many times. You can't just take a great player that plays live for a living all of his life and put him in the studio and he turns out to be great, because it's two different things. It's two different attitudes of looking at music when you're in the studio or when you're on stage playing in front of a live audience. It's just different. And if you can do both, great, more power to you.
I know we need to wrap up in a second, but as one of our last questions, you've played music your whole life. You've written music for decades. If anyone can answer this question, I feel like it is you. What is needed for a great soul song?
Wow. Well, I would say a good performance by everybody, but especially the singer. If the singer's not giving you a good performance, you're not going to have a hit record. You can't just put out a bad performance, and you have to know the difference. So to start, like I said, when the hair on my arm stood up, I knew we had a good singer. So there you go. So I refer to Otis Redding and Rod Stewart, the only two singers that I ever worked with that sang a song like it was the last song they were ever going to sing. Big difference. Because that inspires musicians to give their all. Everything they've got at that time, they're going to put all that energy towards that performance. So excellent. I think the great Cosmos they made records down in with Alan Toussaint all down in New Orleans. And he said, I like all this digital stuff, but at the end of the day, you don't have a great performance. You might have a great record, but you don't have a great performance. And I think he's right about that. So who knows?
Yeah. Well,
in today's technology, anybody can do anything. And The one thing I want to say about Roger Real and this record that's out, listen to it and you tell me he did all of the vocals through an iPhone.
Really? Wow.
Every one of them. And even my engineer, we're coming back from lunch one day and we're listening to some of the mixes we'd made. He said, I can't believe you did that on an iPhone.
Wow.
It's crazy. Well,
That's amazing.
They've been telling us that, when they promoted their phones back when, and now they're on to movies. You can make your home movies, edit just like Hollywood. So they're off of the phone, of the microphone and the phone thing. And there's proof, and they were glad to hear that. How many people have done that? I don't think anybody. And so Roger knew what to do. I don't know how to do it. We've never been in a studio together, so I don't know how far he was or how close he was to the mic and the phone. I have no idea. Wow. I could ask him, and I don't know if he knows either.
Yeah.
But it was excellent. His performance is something else.
It's fantastic.
Well, the record.
So John would send him a track. He would finish some of the lyrics and maybe all the lyrics and sing the melody to the tracks and send it back to John. John would send it to me. I said, "That's another one. That's another one."
Fire It Up, the new solo album by Steve Cropper, is available this Friday, April 23rd. For more information and to get your copy, check out his website, playitsteve.com.
You can follow us on all the various socials. You can check out our website at rockandrollgradschool.com for more grad school content. And please leave us a review on iTunes. We're tired of asking our family members to do so.
Today's show was produced by myself and Heidi Hedquist. Our reluctant executive producers are John Sauvé and Sandy Stone. Our willing producers are Rachel Allen and Randy Jeanette. Our intern is Zach Jackson. Our graphic designer is Samantha Mastonen. This one's for Philippe. Thank you, good night, and may all your favorite bands stay together.